There are two kinds of people, the weak and the strong.
So something I think is really interesting with Earth Abides is the way that it is kind of laid out. By the time Charlie is introduced in episode 4, we've already spent like 17 years with this core group of survivors. And then in comes Charlie to really disrupt all of that. And we don't really get a lot about his backstory, except for what he's kind of willing to divulge. So I'm curious for you in like shaping that character. Are there a lot of details that you've kind of filled in to help kind of inform the things that he's doing and why he's kind of reacting the way he does?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is interesting to kind of jump into a story like this where the world has been kind of so well crafted and built, and we've seen a group of people surviving the way that they're surviving. And then, of course, we meet another group of people that it's very clear that they have survived in a very different way. And so for me, I mean, I think this is the fun part as an actor, is that you get to let your kind of curiosity and imagination go, and you say like, okay, we need to get here. How did this person get there? And that's kind of, you personally get to make those choices and decisions, and it's really fun. And for me, I thought Charlie was probably a guy who, before the event happened in the show, wasn't from the best area, got by kind of his smarts and his charm, and probably was pulling petty crimes and stealing and manipulating people and, who knows what else, but nothing major. And then, of course, he's thrust into the situation where he realizes that he has this skill set to take advantage of people. And then of course, like you said, 17 years later, we've seen how that has grown and marinated and gotten worse and worse over that time. So that's kind of what I thought. And, Todd, the writer and showrunner, wonderfully collaborative. And that was his perspective as well. And we talked a lot about, where this guy came from. And it's that's the fun part as an actor. It's like you get to just like let your imagination run wild.
It is. And I love talking with actors about the process of creating characters in so much that it extends beyond what we get on the page. And I'm curious, like, what sort of methods went into your crafting of Charlie? Something I was thinking about in watching this is a show that would be ripe for working with like animal work and kind of assigning characters and the animals that they kind of embody, because there's so much of this like primal human nature and also so much into the wilderness. And so what were you working with Charlie in terms of how you built him up?
Yeah, I love things like that. And for me, he's like, he's really like a snake in the grass, right? It's like you can't see him coming. And I think that what I hoped to do was, for when the audience meets Charlie, it's at a moment where Ish is struggling and where the group of people are struggling with some water issues, some tactile things. And so could Charlie be the answer to their problems, right? And so if there's a way that I could have the audience kind of questioning, oh, well, maybe Charlie is the answer. Maybe this way that he is, and sure, he's, maybe a little abrasive, but he gets it done and he's a great leader. And so to kind of to bank the shot and hold out as long as possible for that shoe to drop, right? That's where I was working towards. And like you said, the animal thing, right? That's why you don't see a snake in the grass, is because you're distracted by all these other things. You're distracted by his charm. You're distracted by him singing Oasis with the kids and the kids falling in love with him, and all these other aspects of his personality that you don't see, you don't see the bite coming.
Mm-hmm. And there's a great scene in episode 4 that I really love, and it really stuck out because I think it's the first moment you realize that he's introducing danger into this group. It's the scene with Jean where he offers her the cigarette, and it's like it's really great moment as well, because there's so much that's said that isn't necessarily said in dialogue. There's that like great moment where it's just kind of silence between them, and there's a lot shared in the expressions on their faces. And I'm curious, like, what was kind of creating that scene like? The blocking is so good in that. Can you kind of walk through that scene in particular? Because it really stands out to me at episode 4.
Yeah, we had a wonderful time shooting that scene. It wasn't easy though, because a lot of times, when you're on set, they're basically telling you faster, better, funnier, right? They're like, move along, say the words faster, let's get on with it. And actually, that was a scene where Todd and the director were telling us to take our time and really, really listen and really breathe together. And, when you're not accustomed to doing that all the time. Sometimes you feel like you can't do that. It took a little bit of getting used to, but I think when we found a real flow, and there was something like really kind of intoxicating about smoking together and sharing that moment and kind of luring her character back to this other side, because Charlie somehow saw that there was a tiny little crack that he could get in. It was so fun to do, and then to see her kind of shut it down, that was one of the more fun scenes I've done in a long time because of that. And it was challenging.
It was a great scene to watch. It really stood out in that episode because it's so rare today to have those moments where characters are allowed to like breathe and just kind of exist on screen. So it really stood out in that moment.
I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you. That's great.
And I love that you mentioned the Oasis moment where you get to do a little bit of singing as Charlie. I love seeing you kind of make that break from the musical theater world again and kind of come back to this like really gritty and dark kind of world of acting. How has it been kind of coming back to this? I think the last thing you did was Schmigadoon, and then obviously on Broadway. Are you looking for more of these roles that are kind of playing against the type that you've been in for so long?
Yeah, I was very, very keen to work on this project. It's interesting. I don't really say, oh, now I'm going to do this or now I'm going to do that. I do take it a bit more on a project to project basis as it comes. But yeah, I've worked, I've had a stretch where I've done, I've been on and off in Moulin Rouge for the past 5 years. And I obviously was amazingly able to do Sweeney Todd this year and work in Schmigadoon, which is a musical series. But before Moulin Rouge, I hadn't been on stage in New York in almost 9 years, and I was working kind of on the other side. So yeah, no, it's been nice to dip my toe back in, but especially with a character like this, not the same as Sweeney, but something that's a little bit darker and a little bit more wrought. I really love doing. I've jokingly said, but it's true. Like if I could play like Gary Oldman-esque villains for the rest of my life, I'd be so content. So I really have fun doing this, and so it's a nice mix in from musical comedy. I'll say that it's a nice change of pace.
It is. It's nice to be able to do both things because I think both evoke such like strong reactions from the audience.
Yeah, it's a nice change of pace. Yeah.
Yeah. And talking about Charlie, I haven't got to see the last 2 episodes, but I did read this book many, many years ago. So I'm curious, like, what you can tease, because I know Charlie is a rather unscrupulous character, about where things are headed with his interest in Evie, if it stays fairly true to where the book goes with that storyline.
Yeah, I think the way the outcome comes together varies a little bit, and they do it in their own way, but yes, no, it stays true to the deplorability that's coming that you see in the book. There's like there's a big turn that happens, and I think Charlie thinks he's just going to win as he always does, and maybe this time he's met his match with this group of people that really can stand up to that kind of behavior.
Had you read the book before this project came along, or did you get to visit it for the first time in preparation?
I'd not read it before. No, I'd heard about it. I read a lot of fantasy and science fiction, but I'd never read this book. And so when I saw the title, I was like, oh, I know what that is. And then, before I started shooting, I read the book, and it was just really great to have that background. And anytime there's source material, I try to take as much of it in as I can, and then kind of let it go and look at what's on the page. But no, it's a great book, and it's fascinating that it was written in the late 1940s. I mean, you can't believe how appropriate it still is. And, that was a time where everybody thought that after World War II and after the A-bomb was dropped, everyone was scared that atomic weapons were going to destroy the world. And instead, this writer wrote this thing that the silent killer was going to destroy the world. And I just think it's fascinating.
I love science fiction, always forward thinking in their approach.
Yep.
This was great, Aaron. Thank you so much.